Tonight, Sydney welcomes 2019 with a bang. More than 1 million people shake off the rain to soak up the world-famous show. But it didn't all go to plan. Hundreds of thousands stopped in their tracks, the rail network fails, and the confusing blunder that was a blast from the past. Shocking pictures of attempted drug smuggling right in the heart of the city, festival warnings ignored, a suspected overdose in the Domain and another death interstate. Electricity cuts, the big changes that kicked in today to reduce power bills by hundreds of dollars a year. A New Year's Day beach tragedy as a local swimmer drowns at Clovelly. And the Prime Minister's advice to struggling all-rounder Mitchell Marsh ahead of the SCG test.
Live from our Sydney headquarters, this is 7 News with Michael Usher.
Good evening. 2019 started with a bang and a crack as 1 million people braved storms to watch the fireworks spectacular on the harbour. While the weather didn't impact the glittering display, lightning strikes did cause major transport headaches. And by this morning, there were plenty more sore heads.
In a word, wow. The best fireworks display on Earth. And it's not just us saying it. A party that has the world impressed. Even Brazilians.
Outstanding, the best one ever. Take Australia!
Really, really amazing!
The largest array of pyrotechnics ever, 100,000 of them fired from the bridge.
It was speechless, just speechless.
For the million or so who came, it was entertainment hard-earned. The lightning, the thunder, then this. The weather threatened to be a giant party pooper. Ponchos were hot items, any cover would do.
And I felt pretty grumpy out there.
Annoying, but the wet did have its advantages.
We got the perfect position. But we're the only ones, really.
Rain, rain, go away.
Eventually it did. A flyover was cancelled, but not the main events, including flaming jet skis in Darling Harbour, the 9 p.m. fireworks, especially for the kids.
Did you love every single bit?
Yeah,
Yeah. Did it sound like popcorn?
yeah.
The taster before the countdown. The harbour transformed into a magical explosion of colour and light. Organisers had promised to raise the bar again. They delivered. Running like clockwork, but not without a hiccup. The wrong date for the new year.
So it was a mistake, but what we can clarify is that it is actually 2019.
Hardly going to be missed with so many mobiles capturing every second of the event. Nothing quite like being there.
I've only ever seen it on TV back at home, and to actually be here and watch it.
Plenty of excuse for romance, maybe a New Year resolution.
Always pack a big umbrella rather than a little one.
After the fireworks ends, some things can get a little weird. There was a heavy police presence, but just 32 arrests.
I'm happy to be quoted as, it really is amongst our safest evenings in the city now on New Year's Eve.
A city on its best behaviour.
Sydney's big show, and once again the Harbour Bridge was the star, and by this morning, thanks to a lot of hard work, it was as if the party had never happened.
35 tonnes of rubbish were collected. That's 10 tonnes less than last year, picked up by hundreds of workers.
They worked all night and they returned this city to the gleaming city that it is.
Others were not at their gleaming best on Bondi Beach this morning, a slow recovery from the year's last big hit-out. Chris Marr, 7.
Well, however, an international embarrassment. That's how Sydney Trains has been described today after storm damage, together with New Year's Eve crowds, left the city's rail network paralysed. Hundreds of thousands of people, told to rely on public transport to get around last night, were stranded for hours. Cancellations and delays continued today.
The party was over, but no one was going anywhere.
This is Central Station, everyone! You've made us all walk here!
1 million people celebrating New Year's Eve were all told to take public transport, but on the night it was needed most, Sydney's rail network collapsed. People queued outside stations for hours.
I get here and Central Park.
When they were finally allowed in, they had to wait again before trains slowly arrived.
Yes, it took longer. I'm really sorry about that, but we tried to do the best we can.
The cause, the storm that rolled through yesterday afternoon, with it lightning that took out key rail infrastructure.
This wasn't just one lightning strike. This was a series, hundreds of hits on overhead wiring, on the ground below, on the signalling system.
The result was crippling, a New Year's hangover that lasted well into today, with services on 7 major lines affected as repairs were carried out. Trains to the airport sat at the platform until passengers gave up, got taxis and missed their flights.
Said maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. I just wait 2 hours.
A lot of crowds, a lot of delays, very, very busy. We had 2 kids.
What the hell went wrong? Why can't Sydney just get it right?
The opposition blames funding cuts to rail maintenance programs, but the boss of Sydney Trains says the city's transport network simply isn't up to scratch.
This is a global city with a third of the network you'd expect to see in the rest of the global cities around the world.
This is exactly why we are investing $20 billion into a metro rail network, because metro rail means you can separate out the rail lines.
Despite all the dramas and headaches, customers will still have to pay for the lack of service. The Premier has today ruled out any chance of a refund for commuters affected by the outages.
That's not currently in our plans, no.
A New Year's to remember, just not for the reasons anyone would have liked.
Let's go live now to Andrew Denning at Central Station. Andrew, will all this mess be fixed by tomorrow morning's peak?
Well, repair crews have been working all day, and rail bosses are confident that they will have things back up and running as scheduled by the time people return to work tomorrow. At the moment, though, things are still not on track. There are travel advisories out for every rail line here in the Sydney metropolitan area, warning of long delays between services, changes without notice, and in some cases buses are replacing trains. The advice there is to check your trip online before leaving. So it seems 24 hours on from what you've got to say was a pretty typical summer storm here in Sydney. This rail network has still not recovered, and that has been a bad way to bring in the new year. Michael?
Thanks, Andrew. Well, around the world, city skylines and landmarks lit up in spectacular displays as the clock struck midnight. Some chose to party, others to protest. World leaders might be hoping for a peaceful year, but North Korea's Kim Jong-un warned the US not to test his patience with sanctions.
A new year in New Zealand. Auckland rang in 2019 before anyone else. A few hours later, skylines across Asia left crowds amazed. And while some in Seoul preferred to light up their screens, North Korea's grand celebration also lit up faces, their leader using the chance to deliver a message to the United States.
I am always ready to sit down again with the US President.
On Hong Kong's Victoria Harbour, all eyes were on the sky. Next was Dubai, where nothing is over the top. The world's largest tower became the centrepiece of a stunning show. London partygoers packed the River Thames and it was breathtaking. New Yorkers were among the last to welcome 2019, braving the elements for hours to watch the iconic ball drop at Times Square. And President Donald Trump made it clear not everyone was on holidays.
Well, I'm at the White House working. You're out there partying tonight, but I don't blame you. Enjoy yourselves. We're going to have a great year. Have a really, really happy New Year.
In Russia, celebrations took a turn for the worst as a bridge collapse injured at least a dozen people. Protests paused the party in Paris. While the Gilets jaunes hoped for a peaceful demonstration, their voices were hijacked by anarchists who called for war on the streets.
In his New Year's Eve address to the nation, President Macron said the things he wishes for France in 2019 include hope, truth, dignity and a common future. But with more protests planned for January, it appears, for now at least, his wishes are unlikely to come true.
But for the people of France, there was still a brand new year to celebrate. Champs-Élysées was the place to party. In Paris, Sarah Greenhalgh, 7 News.
Well, for anyone these next pictures are confronting, for parents it's worse. Despite recent deaths and overdoses, today we saw dozens of young people caught trying to smuggle drugs into a festival in the city. Some tried to swallow suspected illegal substances, others attempted to hide them in their bodies.
Fearing for his life, Police swarm as a young man pulls something from his mouth, a plastic bag allegedly filled with drugs. An officer warning if he swallowed it, he'd be dead. He later denied trying to swallow anything at all.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about.
This woman couldn't hide her pain. Police say she tried to smuggle 25 capsules inside her body.
It's everywhere. I would know heaps of people here that would be taking stuff.
Caught red-handed, even with their pants down. At least 6 suspected dealers were arrested by mid-afternoon.
Stop resisting! Stop resisting!
The Field Day Festival in the Domain, a field day for sniffer dogs. Dozens of people stopped, led away to be questioned and searched. Some had nothing.
It was a bit nerve-wracking.
For others, the evidence was damning.
Not only did organisers warn publicly in advance about the presence of a lot of police, they also raised the alarm about stronger than normal drugs being sold that have been linked to recent overdoses. Paramedics treated one person for a suspected overdose late this afternoon, while in Victoria, the 5th festival death in 3 months has been confirmed. But still, the message isn't getting through.
If you do drugs, you're stupid.
A searing hot day of blood, sweat and tears, with the party only just getting started. Alex Hart, 7 News.
A man is drowned while snorkelling at Clovelly Beach in Sydney's east this afternoon. The 38-year-old was pulled from the water unconscious and not breathing around 2 p.m. A doctor on the scene tried to resuscitate him, then paramedics took over, but he could not be revived. Witnesses say the man was a regular at the beach and a strong swimmer.
We can only suspect that some type of medical problems occurred to the person.
The police are still investigating.